sabotaged this deal, Maya, and you think there aren't consequences? Look at what you've done!
I didn't mean for it to fall apart. I was trying to protect the team, Daniel, please!
You emptied 3 months of work
Oh my
in
God.
Your access has been revoked. Please step away from the podium. Ava froze, staring at the security guards blocking the stage, her stage in the company she built from the ground up. Whispers filled the room like smoke as board members watched her with cold, calculated satisfaction. Fired, publicly, without warning. The humiliation stung, but beneath it burned something far more dangerous. Truth they never expected her to reveal. Because in the next 60 seconds, Ava wouldn't just defend herself. She would expose them all, turning their power play into their downfall. This is the story of a CEO they tried to silence. Welcome, story lovers, from where are you watching? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Ava Kingsley had never been the type to chase power for its own sake. She chased purpose. Growing up in a small southern town where opportunities were scarce and expectations even scarcer, she learned early that excellence wasn't just a choice, it was a survival strategy. Her mother used to tell her, "You'll have to be twice as good to get half as far." Ava took those words and carved them into her bones. She studied harder than anyone, graduated top of her class, and climbed the corporate ladder with a quiet determination that left entire boardrooms stunned. By the time she reached her early 30s, she became the youngest and the first Black CEO of Viridian Tech, a company she helped rebuild from the inside out. To the world, she represented progress. To her team, she represented fairness. But within the walls of the executive floors, not everyone viewed her success as something to celebrate. Some saw her rise as an accident, others an inconvenience, and a few a threat. Still, Ava didn't allow the shadows behind her to slow her stride. She spent her days overseeing new projects, guiding her staff, and reshaping a dysfunctional culture into one rooted in transparency and innovation. Her nights were quieter, filled with late emails, strategic plans, had the soft hum of the city lights outside her office windows. She thought she had finally built a life where her work spoke louder than prejudice. But there were signs, subtle ones, that something was shifting. Meetings scheduled without her. Decisions made behind closed doors. The sudden change in tone from certain board members, the way they exchanged glances when she walked into a room. She noticed, but she kept going, trusting her results to speak louder than politics. Little did she know, the storm she sensed brewing was already underway, and the people she believed were allies had already begun moving against her. Quietly, strategically, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, a moment that would come sooner than she ever expected. And in front of the entire company, the first sign came during the quarterly review. Ava had poured months into restructuring Viridian's finances, rescuing it from the brink after years of mismanagement. The numbers in her slide deck were undeniable. Profits up, turnover down, investors returning with confidence. Yet as she presented, she noticed the board members weren't focused on her work. They were focused on each other, whispering, smirking, avoiding her eyes. She brushed it off, trying to stay committed to the presentation. But the tension in the room clung to the air like humidity before a storm. When she finished, the applause was scattered and reluctant, as if they were clapping out of obligation, not appreciation. 2 days later, she received a meeting invitation. Mandatory full company attendance. The kind of meeting reserved for major announcements, mergers, or leadership changes. But no one had told her anything. She called Marcus her trusted coup, but he didn't answer. She messaged the board chair, no response. The silence felt deliberate when the morning of the meeting arrived. She stepped into the auditorium and immediately sensed something was wrong. The air felt heavy. Employees avoided her gaze. The board sat in the front row, stiff and cold. And standing at the podium was Harold Crane, the senior board member who had made no secret of his disdain for her leadership. Ava took her seat, her heartbeat loud enough to drown out the whispers. Harold cleared his throat and announced, "Before we begin, we need to discuss leadership concerns." leadership concerns. About what? Her work was flawless. Then Harold's voice sharpened. He spoke of misaligned values, performance discrepancies, and trust issues within the executive branch. Words that carried weight, yet lacked truth. Every sentence felt like an accusation wrapped in corporate politeness. Every phrase a dagger. Ava sat still, keeping her breathing steady even as the room tilted with disbelief. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could stand, Harold delivered the line that froze the entire auditorium. As of this moment, Ava Kingsley is terminated from her role as CEO. The room erupted. Gasps, confusion, employees looking at one another in shock. Some covered their mouths. Others stared at her with sympathy, helpless to intervene. Ava remained frozen, fired publicly, without cause, without discussion. The humiliation hit first, a wave of heat that crawled up her neck. Then came the clarity. This wasn't about performance. This was about power and race and control. She rose slowly, steadying herself as Harold gestured to security to escort her out. The sight ignited something inside her, not fear, but a fierce, righteous anger. But before the guards reached her, Ava reached for her tablet, the one containing every record, every email, every document she had collected over the past few months. Evidence, proof, a trail of misconduct, racism and corruption that the board thought she hadn't seen. And as she powered it on, the room quieted. She was not leaving quietly. Not today. The board had tried to end her career in front of everyone. They had no idea she was seconds away from ending theirs. Ava stepped toward the center of the stage, tablet glowing in her hand like a truth the board never thought she'd expose. The security guards paused as if sensing something powerful shifting in the room. Employees leaned forward, breath caught in their throats. Her voice, calm and cutting, filled the auditorium. She projected the files onto the massive presentation screen. At first, the room saw emails, dismissive comments about her background, coded language dripping with bias. Then came the financial reports, showing misappropriated funds hidden before her tenure. And then the audio files, recordings of boardroom conversations they thought would never leave four walls, whispers, plans, explicit, comments about putting her in her place. The entire company was watching. Harold surged to his feet, shouting for the projector to be turned off, but no one moved. His words crumbled beneath the avalanche of truth filling the room. The employees' expressions morphed from confusion to disgust. The executives beside Harold leaned away from him. As though the stain of corruption might spread, Ava turned to him, her calmness sharper than rage. She didn't need to shout. The evidence spoke louder than any voice ever could. And then, the final file played, Harold's own voice discussing how firing her publicly would restore proper order. Gasps erupted again. Chairs scraped back. The room shattered into chaos. This wasn't just her firing. This was their downfall. And with the whole company watching, the board's empire cracked open. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. The aftermath unfolded quickly. HR launched an immediate investigation. Investors demanded accountability. Within 48 hours, 3 board members resigned, Harold included. The remaining executives issued a formal apology and reinstated Ava, not as a gesture of goodwill, but because the truth had left them no choice. But Ava declined. She wasn't interested in returning to a structure that had tried to break her. Instead, she used her severance and the public support she received to launch her own consulting firm, one dedicated to exposing workplace discrimination and empowering marginalized professionals who had been silenced and sidelined. Her story spread far beyond the walls of Viridian Tech. It became a rallying point, a reminder of how racism in corporate spaces often hides behind polished speeches and strategic smiles. Ava's courage revealed something deeper, that silence protects injustice, but truth dismantles it. Employees who had watched her stand alone that day, found their own strength to speak up in their workplaces, their communities, their lives. Ava hadn't just ended the board's careers. She had sparked a movement in the quiet of her new office. Overlooking the same city that once felt indifferent to her struggle, Ava reflected on the journey. The pain, the humiliation, the injustice, it all still lingered. But so did something stronger, hope, because sometimes change doesn't come through quiet negotiation. Sometimes it comes through a woman standing alone with the truth and refusing to be erased. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories. And ask yourself, when injustice stands on a stage, who will dare turn on the spotlight?